Welcome to our section on medical anthropology. Are you ready for some football? In 2016, an estimated $13.3 billion was generated by the NFL from TV revenue alone. It's one of the most successful U.S. cultural products. But what is often overlooked and not talked about as much are the injuries and long-term health consequences suffered by players in the NFL. Junior Seau was a linebacker who played for several teams in the NFL. In 2012, he committed suicide by shooting himself in the chest. It's been documented that Seau suffered from long, deep bouts of depression, ultimately said to be caused by chronic traumatic encephalopathy. CTE is a type of chronic brain damage caused by repetitive head trauma, and it can lead to conditions like dementia, rage, and depression. CTE was discovered by Dr. Bennett Amalu, a Nigerian-born doctor, in 2002. As we think as anthropologists about health, illness, and notions of the body across culture, how do we make sense of bodies and health in American sports and American football in particular? This, as we mentioned, the most successful U.S. cultural products has transformed play, exercise, and games that build healthy bodies into a multi-billion-dollar extravaganza in which bodies become entertainment and injuries and long-term health consequences are almost invisible. How do we make sense of the NFL's efforts to obscure the scientific data linking football concussions with brain disease, or the ways Americans' notion of health, disease, and the body intersect with concepts of race and class to mask the harsh realities of this game? And why did it take a doctor from Nigeria to see clearly the injuries to the bodies and brains in this classic American sport? These are the types of issues that medical anthropology explores. Now we want to turn to a question and an issue that's also a concern with medical anthropology. What do you do when you get sick? Whom do you call? Mom, dad, the doctor, friends? Do you go to a massage therapist, your campus health center, the hospital? What strategies do you use to get well? You stay in and sleep, drink orange juice, starve a cold and feed a fever? Do you adopt a medical practice from outside of the United States, from a different culture? What strategies do you use to relieve pain? Take medication for fever? Or do you apply heat, ice massage? How do you figure out what made you sick so that you don't get sick again? When you are sick, how do you keep others from being infected? We know that we've been taught to cover our mouth while sneezing, and we avoid contact if we can, but what other strategies do you use? How do you feel about getting sick? How do you think it says, or what do you think it says about you as a person? What does it say about you if you've got certain symptoms, cold, a fever, or a sexually transmitted infection? Is there a social cause to your illness or your disease? Lack of clean water, hygiene, or is there a social stigma about disease or illness that keeps you from seeking treatment? Is it too expensive, far away? These are all issues that the field of medical anthropology explores. These issues and more. What is health? And how does culture shape our ideas of health and illness? Health is the absence of disease and infirmity, as well as the presence of physical, mental, and social well-being. Now, let's talk about culture, health, and illness. In assessing how disease and health conditions affect specific populations and how specific cultural groups diagnose, manage, and treat health-related problems, medical anthropologists have found it useful to distinguish between disease, illness, and sickness. Disease, a discrete natural entity that can be clinically identified and treated by a healthcare professional. A disease may be carried genetically or through infection by bacteria, virus, or parasites, but they are the same regardless of location or cultural context. Illness, that's an individual's experience of being unwell. Illness is more than biological disease. Diseases can be observed, measured, and treated by sufferers and healers. But culture gives meaning to disease, shaping the human experience of illness, pain, suffering, dying, and health. Illness is the individual's experience of being unwell. It includes the way he or she feels about it, talks about it, thinks about it, and experiences it within a particular cultural context. Sickness. Sickness is the individual's public expression of illness and disease, including the social expectation on how we should respond and behave when we are sick. You may not have thought about it, but there are social expectations on how we should act and how others should respond when we're sick. The sick role in American culture includes a clear wish to get well, cooperate with medical experts. That includes doctors and parents and many other people that are a part of our lives when it comes to sickness. Let's turn our attention to healthcare now. When we think of healthcare in the West, it might be that we have images of doctors, dentist chairs, hospitals, medicines, all kinds of technology, but that's not the point of entry for healthcare in most places in the world, nor even in Western countries. Most people, before turning to the professionals, apply their own personal knowledge, their own strategies, handed down within families or communities. Ethnomedicine are those local health systems rooted in culturally specific norms and values. They're the strategies that are used for dealing with disease, illness, and health. The early study of ethnomedicine focused on non-Western techniques and natural healing remedies such as herbs, teas, massage, and also the reliance on religious ritual and the roles of locally trained healers such as shamans, spirit mediums, priests, and priestesses, as well as healthcare professionals. Ethnopharmacology, documenting and describing natural substances used in healing remedies and practices, came into being as researchers documented the use of local natural substances, such as the herbs, powders, teas, and animal products that are used in healing remedies and practices. As the readings for the course this week point out, for two seemingly different issues, we see that culture plays a role. In the case of the article on Latinos and the U.S. obesity epidemic, we see that outside assumptions about Latino culture and the lack of knowledge regarding obesity don't prove true and actually ignore the structural barriers and the role that the rhetoric about the economic burden placed on society by obesity in general. These assumptions play into the continued marginalization of minority groups. In the case of midwives and home birth, the issue bumps up against cultural ideas drawn from biomedical models that have come to question practices that have a long history in the U.S. and continue to be the dominant form of delivery in other parts of the world.